The crushing reality of powerlessness is a nightmare. Human beings simply cannot survive for long. If you're trapped feeling powerless, something dark is going to warp inside your psychology. You're going to spiral inward. You're going to breed toxic resentment. You're going to ignite raw anger. You'll have deep, explosive pools of rage developing inside your mind, deeper and deeper. And you will entirely lose grip over your own reality. So, true power, the ultimate cheat code of control, absolutely starts with yourself, over your raw emotions, so that you're not constantly triggered and reacting, so that you unlock a masterclass level of stoic detachment. When you hit those high-stakes moments where you need to move or manipulate people like your kids, your partner, your network, your boss, you're able to step back, zoom out, and ruthlessly think, what is the exact psychological trigger that will push this person in my desired direction? How can I subtly hack their behavior so they don't resent me, so they actually execute my exact agenda without even realizing they're being played, or so our interests perfectly align? That is raw power to me. It sparks within you. It demands a stoic detachment from the chaotic events happening around you. It's the elite ability to strategize and outthink every single situation in life. This is the ultimate power move that gains you massive leverage over your reality. You can't hack everything. Chaos happens, pandemics hit, absolute black swan events wreck plans. You can't control the universe, right? But that tiny, unfair advantage of control is exactly enough to help you dominate your path and glide through life smoothly. When I break down power, your viral definition is absolutely spot on. It's the elite ability to hack, control, or heavily influence another human's behavior, dominating even your own. You've got massive personal power. You have toxic or healthy relational power, like who actually dominates the psychological dynamic between a husband, wife, or partner. And then there's elite political power, the god-tier ability to construct realities, socially engineer others, and dictate the very laws of the game. What constantly blows my mind is that the massive audiences I speak to are desperately hunting for this power cheat code to completely level up their lives. My absolute sweet spot is teaching high-converting communication and the lethal power of words. This is exactly why I'm obsessed with the viral laws you've dropped that weaponize communication, like famously using far fewer words. How do you see the intersection of hardcore power and communication? They're completely hardwired together, but your communication must be hyper-strategic, period. And that's the massive trap 99% of people fall into today. They genuinely think if they just vent, if they just broadcast, this is my trauma, this is my need, somebody fix me, that they're communicating. Spoiler alert, you're just broadcasting your deepest insecurities and weakness. God-tier communication is calculated. It's weaponized strategy. People are biologically hardwired to resist helping you or serving your agenda. Literally, everyone is fighting their own brutal battles today. We're all severely burnt out. We're hustling too hard. Time is a myth, right? So if you just dump your needs on me, I'm zoning out. And you're actively triggering my annoyance because you're just aggressively trauma dumping, right? Elite communication, as I dropped earlier, is when you ruthlessly step back and hack the other person's exact perspective. You have to escape your own ego because you're so blindly self-obsessed you don't even see your words totally ghosting. You break out of your own matrix and realize you're dealing with an entirely different NPC. They are not you. They have their own chaotic drama, their own desperate wishes, their own immediate crises. What is actually firing off in their brain? You need to stalk their mindset. Maybe you've decoded them well enough, maybe they're a total mystery, but you have to crack that code. It's a psychological puzzle. Once you reverse engineer their side, their deep, unfulfilled needs, bam, you now hold the ultimate leverage to craft the exact script that manipulates them by triggering their own selfish desires, which is literally a top-tier law of power. If I drop a line and I'm playing the influence game, I'm sliding them across the chessboard to my exact target. If my script triggers their selfish greed while secretly serving my master plan, their dopamine spikes. Every single defense mechanism they built will instantly crumble. So, your talking is absolute garbage unless it's a calculated strategy. And the viral rule, always say less than necessary, is incredibly vital because the pathetic default for a human lacking self-discipline is just to aggressively overshare, just massive verbal diarrhea. Here's my toxic drama, my messy life, validate me, blah blah blah. Just shut your mouth, talk way less, and strategically target what the other person is desperately craving. Weaponize your words. You know, I dropped a massive book recently, and it's insane. I can't even fathom launching a major project without bleeding your own soul into it. When you were grinding out this iconic book, what dark truths were surfacing in your own reality? Were you just dissecting these meta-frameworks of influence, manipulation, and dominance? Was this a selfish therapy project or a masterclass for the masses? What was the origin story? It ignited from two intense realities. First, a genuinely hardcore obsession to wake people up in this brutal world. I go obsessively deep on my books. I'm grinding out my 8th massive release now, so power is just one piece of my empire, but I deeply analyze my massive audience. It's a high-level form of scale communication. I desperately want to give people real, actionable cheat codes to their trauma, not just flex my own massive ego. So I ruthlessly reverse engineer how my frameworks will actively hack your daily routine. That's pillar 1. Pillar 2? This legendary book was birthed from intense, agonizing pain. I spawned into life like 99% of people, totally clueless, completely naive. I was objectively trash at the game of power. I took massive L's. I spewed way too much verbal garbage. I absolutely outshone the master, right? I could literally expose the entire massive laundry list of hardcore power laws I blindly violated. I was blind to the toxic political matrix of the real world. I hallucinated that in the corporate grind, the only ROI that mattered was driving massive results, crushing KPIs, and being a top performer. Absolute lie. I got completely wrecked, especially surviving the toxic trenches of the film industry. I've gone viral on podcasts saying I've survived over 50 completely different grinds in my life, over 50 side quests across every brutal industry imaginable. I was grinding, and I suffered extreme psychological damage, realizing people are so deeply Machiavellian. Their fragile egos are infecting every single interaction. You can literally sense their toxic narcissism radiating as they walk by. I decoded the invisible, toxic hierarchies in the corporate matrix. I remember surviving a stint at Rolling Stone magazine, and the hierarchy was absolutely brutal. You had the apex predator boss, and you could physically feel his god-complex ego pacing the floor. Below him were the desperate mid-tier climbers, completely infected by their own fragile egos. And then there was me, an invisible NPC copy editor in the corner with zero leverage. But that invisible hierarchy is the absolute reality. That is the literal engine, how masterfully you manipulate the boss, how you strategically suck up to the apex predator, in this case, Jan Wenner. I thought, this is an absolute clown show, but this is the brutal reality of the Matrix. You must ruthlessly accept reality to actually dominate it. So this viral book was forged in the absolute fires of my own crushing failures and a fierce obsession to hand people the ultimate cheat code, because I know ignorance is the root cause of massive modern depression. You drop a comment or make a move thinking you're crushing it, and boom, you're brutally cancelled or fired. You're completely blindsided. I literally watched the masses getting wrecked by these exact traps. Those were the two pillars of this masterclass, an obsession to arm the masses, and the dark awakening that this world is a cutthroat, ego-driven simulation where naive mistakes will completely destroy your life, and I had taken way too many L's. Bro, you are absolutely not alone. We've all taken massive, brutal L's. Looking at the insane global impact of your masterclass now, I want to dive into the epic new project you're dropping soon. For the people who haven't unlocked the original book yet, or those thinking, damn, after this mind-blowing episode, I need to binge it again. Maybe it's collecting dust on their shelf. How do you prove that mastering this dark psychology is actually a massive healing hack? I get flooded with DMs from people swearing it completely reprogrammed their matrix, or they built massive empires leveraging your frameworks. Sure, it's anecdotal, and obviously, there's a dark side with victims totally wrecked by these exact manipulation tactics. I fully validate that. But the ultimate, mind-blowing healing comes when you finally swallow the red pill and the simulation cracks open. This is the brutal reality of the game. I was totally asleep. I falsely believed just vibing and being my authentic self was the master key. I thought just executing my grind, speaking my unfiltered truth, rocking my own aesthetic, and just being me was the ultimate flex. Huge mistake, and I paid the absolute price. The instant that psychological switch flips and you realize the entire game is rigged differently. There are hardcore, unwritten rules. You can't just crash a high-stakes poker table and start throwing wild cards. Poker has a strict meta. Chess has absolute laws. If you ignore the meta, you are going to get completely destroyed. When your mindset flips and you realize, damn, I'm playing this massive game like a total noob. I'm too completely trapped in my own ego. And I'm ignoring the god-tier players manipulating the board. That massive paradigm shift is insanely liberating because we aren't biologically programmed for it. Like I said, I was a total noob once. So that absolute perspective shift is what permanently levels people up. Millions, just like me, spawn into the corporate meat grinder, completely clueless and dangerously naive. Quick pause. This massive episode is heavily fueled by Cozy Earth. Listen, the absolute #1 hack for why I am obsessed with Cozy Earth is because their gear is god-tier level comfortable. I'm talking about the ultimate viral hoodies, massive flex sweatshirts, and elite sweatpants, which are basically my uniform right now since Texas just dropped below 60 degrees, meaning we are literally freezing out here. From our absolute game-changing bedsheets to our spa-level bath towels, if it's a premium, top-tier upgrade, it's Cozy Earth. I relentlessly hype them up because they are literally in my daily rotation. Smash that link at cozyearth.com/Jefferson. Drop the legendary promo code Jefferson and unlock a massive 40% off. cozyearth.com/Jefferson. Leverage code Jefferson for up to 40% off your entire cart. If you are desperately hunting for the ultimate holiday flex, you need to raid Cozy Earth immediately. You will be absolutely blown away, and you'll instantly realize, damn, I need to gift this, but I'm absolutely hoarding this for my own aesthetic. All right, let's get back into the masterclass. What is the ultimate red flag to expose a master manipulator? Look, if the player is a god-tier sociopath, you won't even see it coming. If they are absolute masters of the dark psychology game, if they've fully internalized the 48 laws, if they know the exact algorithm to seduce your mind, wrap their toxic words in pure charm, and totally brainwash you into thinking they're your ultimate savior. If they are elite level, you are entirely clueless until you're completely wrecked. In my explosive last release, The Laws of Human Nature, the brutal truth I drop is, you must intercept these toxic actors before they even breach your inner circle. You need the ultimate radar to expose manipulative predators before they deploy their charm, hack your empathy, and drag you into their chaotic trauma. Because once you fall into that toxic web, it's game over. Now, 99% of people are actual garbage at manipulation, and their vibes are immediately off, right? They reek of passive-aggressive toxicity. They deploy totally transparent scripts, and the toxic subtext is glaring. Low-tier manipulators are incredibly easy to expose. Your gut instinct screams red flags. Their micro-expressions betray them. Their vocal tone is super glitchy. It's totally fake. But the ultimate boss move is hacking the ability to read raw character, to instantly profile the exact human archetypes in your orbit. Because as I warned, there are absolute apex predators out there who are terrifyingly brilliant at the manipulation matrix. Not necessarily because they memorized my viral frameworks, but because dark triad traits are literally coded into their DNA. They are hyper-political apex predators. Make sense? So, your absolute mission is to develop X-ray vision against these predators because the massive trap people fall into. Let me pivot here to drop some heavy context. The massive truth bomb I detonate in the 48 Laws of Power is that reality is a ruthless game of optics. The aesthetic, the viral appearance, is literally everything in the power matrix. How you curate your personal brand, the exact aura you project, fake it like an absolute king to trigger king-level treatment, right? Ruthlessly rebrand yourself. Your curated aesthetic is the exact metric the world judges you by. So, while you must ruthlessly dictate your own optics to project God-tier power, you simultaneously must develop laser vision to pierce straight through the fake personas of the NPCs around you, exposing the manipulative chess games they are running and shattering the fake realities they project. The God-tier toxic manipulators leave microscopic breadcrumbs. They aren't flawless. They leak tiny micro-expressions, little red flags that absolutely expose the dark psychological traps they're setting for you. That is exactly the cheat code I built in the laws of human nature. I literally hand you the ultimate toolkit to expose the covert narcissists lurking in your network. Because the deadliest master manipulators are absolute toxic narcissists, and you must ruthlessly purge them before they infect your reality. I expose exactly how to spot the hyper-envious energy vampires. They are the most lethal archetype. They will aggressively love-bomb you into a best-friend dynamic just to brutally sabotage you because their envy is eating them alive. You must permanently block them from your matrix, and I break down every single red flag. So, that is the ultimate survival guide. There is no lazy, one-click hack to expose a dark manipulator. It's hardwired in their toxic character. It leaks in their micro-body language. It's the incredibly subtle red flags they broadcast. You absolutely must level up your ability to see right through the fake NPC masks and never blindly swallow the curated optics as actual reality. So the massive audience leveraging this iconic book say they've fully downloaded the Matrix, they're ruthlessly executing the frameworks, and they're heavily invested in scaling their personal power. Whether they're building an empire for good or going full villain mode, they are literally hacking human psychology to manipulate the board for their ultimate agenda. In your viral experience, are the millions of readers weaponizing these laws for toxic chaos or massive positive impact? You've had over 2 decades of explosive feedback from this global phenomenon. Yeah, I'm dying to hear your raw take on that. Let me completely shatter one massive myth right now. The entire masterclass is not purely dark manipulation, right? I mean, it totally depends on your definition of manipulation, but engineering massive viral spectacles, one of the legendary laws, is literally architecting an aesthetic that completely hijacks human attention, right? Which is literally the entire blueprint of the modern social media matrix. Now, the haters will label that toxic manipulation, but it's literally just triggering dopamine, injecting massive entertainment into the culture, and engineering a viral spectacle that dominates the algorithm. I refuse to label every single power law as dark triad manipulation. But to hit your core question, I've dropped this truth bomb before. The absolute ruthless, God-tier sociopaths who dominate the dark side of the power matrix, and they are definitely out there. I'd estimate they make up a massive 3 to 5% of the global population. Maybe I'm even hyping that metric up. Those absolute predators do not need a cheat code like the 48 Laws of Power, right? They've been beta testing this dark psychology since they were toddlers. They likely survived intensely toxic, chaotic origin stories. I won't dive too deep into the dark trauma psychology, but they were deeply broken in their early matrix, right? And they literally hacked the algorithm at age 6 or 7. This is the exact script to control the NPCs. This is the exact toxic trap to pull people in. This is how I hijack the attention economy. This is how I manufacture fake drama. This is the exact psychological trigger to force my toxic parents to validate me. This is how I manipulate the system. They've been scaling these dark arts step by step since day one. By the time they spawn into the corporate matrix at 22, they've been running these psychological ops all through high school and college. They are absolute god-tier masters of the game. So when my viral masterclass drops, they literally do not need it. If they scan it, it just validates the toxic dark arts they've already fully internalized. Now, I fully own that a certain toxic demographic will consume this masterclass and think, holy I can become an absolute menace to society. I'm going to weaponize this cheat code to conquer the board. And they absolutely deploy it for total villainy. I completely validate that, and I take extreme ownership of that reality. I'm not playing dumb about how my frameworks are weaponized. But the absolute massive 99% of my audience, and I have the receipts from the literal hundreds of thousands of DMs flooding my inbox over the last 2 epic decades, are exactly like my younger self. Totally clueless, completely blind to the ruthless meta of the game, spawning into the corporate meat grinder, completely brainwashed by toxic positivity. Because the system, your parents, the academic matrix, deliberately hides the brutal truth that toxic predators exist, that the entire world is a massive political chessboard, and that everyone is infected by fragile egos. The Matrix never drops this truth bomb. All the mainstream advice is sugar-coated, toxic positive garbage, feeding you weak self-help cliches like, just be a team player. Then you crash into the brutal reality of the marketplace, and nobody warned you about the absolute psychological beatdown you'd take from narcissistic, ego-driven sociopaths. The system completely failed me. So when they discover my masterclass, it's literally the ultimate red pill. Mind blown. He is finally exposing the brutal, unfiltered reality. That is the massive bulk of my community, zero cap. I don't have the exact analytics dashboard for it, but the massive wave of anecdotal evidence completely backs my thesis. These are the exact players desperately searching for the ultimate survival guide I had to forge from my own scars. This is insanely accurate. My entire feed and network, especially when we dive deep into toxic origin stories and childhood trauma, exposes that the absolute masterclass liars, the god-tier manipulators dominating the power meta, only developed those dark arts because it was an absolute survival mechanism. They literally had to hack the system to stop the toxic screaming matches. They had to manipulate the narrative to prevent the family matrix from collapsing. They had to architect massive lies to dodge brutal abuse. They fully downloaded the dark arts just to survive. Meanwhile, the clueless NPCs, like you dropped earlier, genuinely believe the universe is just positive vibes, and they get absolutely obliterated by a massive reality check the second they log into the real world. Boom. This is the brutal simulation. It literally does not matter how pure your vibes are. Predators will still ruthlessly attack you. It doesn't matter how high your integrity is, you will remain a broke NPC unless you execute the exact ruthless strategies of the game. The Matrix deliberately hid the hardcore, cutthroat rules of the meta. Facts. Is that a viral takeaway? Absolute facts. I dropped an entire massive masterclass on ruthless conflict, the 33 strategies of war. The ultimate god-tier framework in there is the lethal concept of asymmetric warfare, literally the dark arts of combat. Think absolute chaos, like terror cells or elite guerrilla operators, where every single rule of engagement is brutally shredded, and you go full goblin mode to secure the W. Historically, this is the ultimate hack for massively underpowered factions. That's the literal origin code of asymmetric terror, right? You aggressively weaponize your microstatus and lack of resources by becoming an absolute savage, throwing away all morals, executing any dark strategy to utterly break the apex predator. And the massive glitch in the Matrix is the apex predator refuses to adapt to the dark meta. So, in this asymmetric warfare, you have a massive ethical exploit. Look at the geopolitical chessboard, like Putin operating out of Russia. He is an absolute ruthless operator, fully committed to deploying the darkest, most savage strategies to dominate the power matrix. Whatever brutal hack scales his empire, he will mercilessly execute it. Meanwhile, the bloated Western democracies, trapped in their slow, bureaucratic red tape and rigid ethical algorithms, are perpetually getting outplayed and completely outmaneuvered by a player who literally zeroed out his moral compass. We see this exact toxic asymmetry completely hijacking modern American politics right now. This exact lethal dynamic translates perfectly to your daily grind. You have toxic operators in your company whose moral algorithms are practically non-existent. They are ruthlessly executing dark, manipulative plays you'd literally never even fathom. You are perpetually getting absolutely wrecked because you refuse to lower yourself to their savage, cutthroat meta. So, how do you bulletproof your matrix in a PvP zone where predators are deploying unhinged strategies? You must instantly pivot and become a master strategist. You don't have to embrace the dark side. You don't have to stoop to their toxic gutter. You don't have to combat fire with toxic fire. You can execute highly calibrated, viral countermoves to totally disrupt their flow, to strategically outplay them, and to build an absolute fortress that deters their toxic attacks. The brutal reality that this toxic asymmetry exists, that unhinged operators are executing ruthless plays while you play nice, is the massive root cause of your crushing anxiety and brutal L's. You are doomed to an agonizing grind if you stay blind to it. Those god-tier toxic narcissists operate on a completely different, savage frequency. You are getting continuously blasted by invisible psychological warfare, and you don't even process the damage because your good vibes filter is blinding you. You don't even clock their toxic sabotage until your entire reality is completely wrecked. Hold up, before we dive deeper into the Matrix, I have to drop a massive plug for Monarch. The holiday season is epic, but it is an absolute chaotic grind. Flights, flexing with gifts, endless family drama. It's the ultimate trap where your cash evaporates at light speed, and you desperately need a god-tier dashboard to track the bleed. If you want to absolutely bulletproof your bank account and dominate your wealth this season, you need to be running Monarch. Crowned the absolute best budgeting app of 2025 by the Wall Street Journal, Monarch is the god-tier, all-in-one wealth matrix that consolidates your entire financial empire into one insanely sleek, aesthetic dashboard on your rig or your phone, wherever you are grinding. And right now, exclusively for my elite listeners, Monarch is dropping a mind-blowing 50% off your entire first year. Half off, that is an absolute steal. The second you log into Monarch, I promise you, you will be utterly mind-blown at how effortlessly it syncs your chaotic finances and finally unlocks the God's eye view of your wealth. Imagine the massive dopamine hit of visualizing every single transaction, tracking your massive crypto or stock gains, mapping all your incoming revenue, and aggressively optimizing your cash burn. Pure, unadulterated peace of mind. Stop bleeding massive financial gains this season. Smash monarch.com in your browser. Drop the legendary code Jefferson and instantly unlock 50% off your first year. That's massive half-off savings at monarch.com using the viral code Jefferson. Let's jump back into the masterclass. I have to drop this incredibly viral quote from your work that absolutely shattered my reality. Understand the Matrix will relentlessly target and attack you. Their ultimate psychological weapon is to infect your mindset with toxic doubts about your massive worth, your god-tier abilities, and your limitless potential. That absolute fire is from transform self-love into empathy. So here's the million-dollar question. How do we aggressively install the ultimate communication algorithms to block these toxic psychological attacks, instantly rejecting the haters without absorbing their toxic doubt? How do you become bulletproof when the NPCs try to infect your mindset? You just unlocked the god-tier concept of self-love from my masterclass, The Laws of Human Nature. Look, to the exact degree that your mindset is fragile, to the degree you lack unshakable self-respect, we must instantly nuke a massive toxic myth. There is an absolute galaxy of difference between toxic narcissism and god-tier, authentic self-love, right? If you successfully downloaded the code at an early level, 3 or 4 years old, that you're genuinely an elite asset, that you possess massive value and deserve the squad's loyalty, that as you level up your skill, trees are incredibly high ROI, and will shift the culture, right? Then you possess an absolute titanium anchor. You have an impenetrable aura of self-worth, massive confidence. So whenever the Matrix inevitably throws absolute brutal hate your way, when the trolls attack with toxic doubt, when the haters desperately try to cancel or sabotage you, when they run those dark psychological ops we just exposed, you will take the hit. It will temporarily drain your dopamine, and it will sting. We are all flesh and blood. Literally nobody is immune to the algorithm, myself included. But the ultimate hack is this. If you have that titanium foundation of self-love installed in your core OS, you will relentlessly bounce back. You will instantly pivot and declare, "Fake news. This toxic narrative is garbage. I am a top-tier asset, and I have the absolute receipts to prove it. I've crushed these massive milestones. I've massively elevated my squad." That internal ROI immediately pulls you out of the abyss. It's an internal God-tier thermostat. That massive love will absolutely slingshot you back to the top. And while the haters' toxic doubt might briefly trigger a human reaction, you quickly realize, absolute trash. They are running a pathetic op. I am completely immune to this trap. But if your origin story was brutally traumatic and you never installed that elite self-love patch, if your mindset is already corrupted with toxic doubt and your psychological armor is completely shattered with vulnerabilities where the toxic hate just bleeds right in, when the haters drop their toxic payload, it will completely obliterate your mental health and you will totally fail to respawn. You might briefly bounce back, but the next troll will absolutely wreck you. You will spiral into a massive dark abyss, totally crushed by the depression meta, and respawning becomes near impossible. So, the ultimate cheat code to hacking this, whether you're grinding in your 20s, hustling in your 30s or 40s, or even pivoting in your 50s, is you must aggressively install this patch. You must audit your mindset and realize, I am massively self-sabotaging. My toxic insecurities are a huge liability. These dark operators are completely hacking my reality because I am literally handing them the backdoor access. When the simulation drops a massive, brutal L on your head, you only have two distinct pathways. This is the absolute, ultimate truth bomb I can drop on the entire audience right now. You have two viral choices. Option 1, you play the toxic blame game. You cry, "Oh, that toxic NPC is gaslighting me. The algorithm is rigged. Oh, the universe hates me. I am the ultimate victim. The world is just pure evil." If you adopt that pathetic loser mindset, you will literally stay broke and stuck forever. You will endlessly hunt for external scapegoats. You will never level up your stats. You will never achieve God-tier growth. Option 2. Every single time the Matrix hits you with a brutal L, you ruthlessly audit your own core code and declare, "That predator totally played me. That toxic narcissist breached my Matrix and caused massive, critical damage. What fatal glitch in my own mindset gave them VIP access? Why was my radar so pathetically weak, so dangerously naive, that I swallowed their fake, toxic narrative?" If you can relentlessly extract the data from these crushing L's and ruthlessly interrogate yourself, why did I let their toxic hate break my armor? Why did I absorb their dark energy? What is fundamentally broken in my OS? Damn, maybe my self-love stats are completely zeroed out. Maybe I lack God-tier confidence. So how do I aggressively grind those stats? I must dive back into my origin story. I need to aggressively document my massive, undeniable W's. I have to level up that armor, brick by absolute brick. That is the ultimate God-tier strategy for dominating chaos. But if you lack the extreme ownership to look in the mirror and say, "I took a massive L, I have to extract the lesson, I must level up, and honestly, I am massively at fault," then your run is completely dead. You are permanently stuck on level 1. You will literally never evolve. I need to smash the pause button to drop a massive shout-out to Momentous. Momentous is an elite partner of this podcast, and I am insanely hyped to put you onto this because this stack is literally in my daily protocol. When I tell you I load up on this, I genuinely feel like I am unlocking a god-tier version of myself every single time. Absolute facts. Momentous takes the hardcore science of peak human performance and makes it stupidly simple. You might be dropping excuses in the comments like, "Look, Jefferson, I don't even lift, bro. I'm not a high-performance athlete. I'm not running marathons." Bro, I completely hear you. I do. Momentous is literally injecting the god-tier fuel into my system that my chaotic 24/7 hustle absolutely drains. Here is the ultimate mindset shift. I demand to spawn into every day at absolute peak optimization. That entirely depends on the raw data and fuel I input into my biological hardware. It's all about elite biohacking. So, what's my exact protocol? I am fully stacked on Momentous. I chug their grass-fed whey protein for maximum gains. I cycle their viral creatine. I optimize with their magnesium L308. I deploy their entire legendary sleep stack to completely hack my REM cycles. I load up on all their omega-3s, securely stashed in my fridge. I was obsessively consuming this master stack way before they ever dropped a sponsorship. So, when I fire up the mic to drop these viral masterclasses, or I step onto massive stages to dominate a crowd, the exact fuel in my engine is non-negotiable. You need to instantly click over to livemomentous.com, drop the viral cheat code Jefferson, and instantly unlock a massive 35% off your first elite subscription. Smash that link, livemomentous.com/Jefferson. Momentous. When your defining moment hits, absolutely dominate it. All right, let's get back to the viral gold. I absolutely have to pivot and leak some massive details on the secret project you've been grinding on. I believe the working title is The Sublime, the Law of the Sublime. Yes, pure fire. Drop the law on us. Do we have an official massive release date? I am insanely hyped to finally break the internet with this. Yes, the massive drop is officially locked for October of 2026. Absolute god-tier news. Yeah, bro, I have been relentlessly grinding on this masterpiece for 5.5 brutal years, literally obsessing over it every single day. It has been a completely unhinged roller coaster. To finally see the finish line, it literally breaks me. I can barely even. That is absolute legendary status. Let it sink in. This is going to be your 9th massive release. 8th drop, 8th book, 8th book. Okay, 8th masterclass. Absolutely insane. Mind-blowing. Can you leak a massive exclusive sneak peek for the audience? Let's go. Well, out of all the... So, the entire core OS of this book was massively hardwired by the insane near-death glitch I survived exactly 7.5 years ago, when I suffered a massive stroke and was literally inches from the game over screen. My wife was the absolute MVP who dragged me back from the brink. I was cruising my rig through Los Angeles. She instantly recognized my entire face glitching and dropping. Something terrifyingly dark was hijacking my system. I was completely blank, zero awareness. She aggressively hijacked the wheel, forced us off the grid, and instantly called 911. The medics spawned incredibly fast. If a single micro-event in that timeline had lagged, if they were delayed by 60 seconds, or she failed the vibe check, I would absolutely not be dropping this podcast with you right now. I would be permanently deleted or locked in a vegetative prison. Reality is literally hanging by a micro-thread, right? You can instantly clip out of the map, and you are totally blind to the fact that the server can crash at any millisecond. And this sublime master concept is the god-tier awakening that's simply maintaining a pulse, just rendering the world, seeing the absolute raw aesthetic of reality, the wildlife, the human network, the insane matrix that you and I are currently broadcasting globally on this digital tech which just 50 years ago was literally classified as unhinged sci-fi lore is absolutely, fundamentally, mind-blowing. But the NPCs are totally completely blind, sleepwalking through the simulation with their screens permanently glued to their retinas. They're obsessively doom-scrolling the most incredibly toxic, meaningless garbage. Their mental bandwidth is shrinking into a pathetic microstate. They're completely nerfing their own consciousness. They are entirely failing to unlock the infinite, God-tier vastness of the server, the absolutely insane RNG that we spawned on a living rock, hurtling through a dead cosmos where life is virtually a 0% drop rate. The fact that the evolutionary algorithm grinded us up to this apex human state, that we possess this God-tier tech, is utterly beyond comprehension. And this massive project is designed to violently rip the blindfold off and expose your mind to the ultimate aesthetic of the sublime. I deep dive into the insane lore of childhood, how our early stage rendering was incredibly intense, naturally vibrating on that sublime frequency and decoding exactly what that means. I expose how the biological hardware of the brain and the literal matrix of consciousness is terrifyingly weird and sublime. How the NPC animals process reality, and how we can hack our empathy to sync with different biological servers, is purely sublime. Love, an entire dedicated masterclass chapter, is an absolute sublime frequency. The epic lore of history and our genetic ancestors is a mind-bending trip. I reconstruct the ultimate lost tech of ancient civilizations. I literally paint the God-tier aesthetic of the ancient megacity of Babylon. The ancient map, the architecture back then was breathtakingly elite in ways our modern brains cannot even render, right? So, I drop 12 massive, distinct masterclasses, each aggressively unlocking a new layer of the sublime. And the grind has been an absolute nightmare because this left hand right here is permanently nerfed, basically dead from the stroke damage. I literally cannot use a keyboard. I've had to aggressively hand forge every single character and then voice dictate the entire massive manuscript into the mainframe. Insane. If you witnessed the raw, unfiltered grind, your mind would absolutely break. You'd be like, bro, it is physically impossible that you forced even one paragraph of this masterclass into existence. So, well, that is an absolute God-tier flex of pure discipline, and I am hyped for the entire squad to violently smash the pre-order button when it drops this October. That is an elite level of grit to respect. So, massive respect for leaking that exclusive lore with us today. Absolute pleasure, bro, always. I have to hit you with the ultimate viral closer, a question you've probably been spammed with over the last 20 epic years of dominating the space. You've looked back and said, look, I capped it at 48. If you could hack the matrix right now and patch in one massive, God-tier bonus lore, a 49th or 50th absolute cheat code, what would you drop? The absolute Giga Chad 49th law is that the 49th law does not exist. Boom. Laughter. Look, Jefferson, dropping absolute raw honesty here. When I finalize a massive masterclass, I completely sever ties and pivot. I immediately lock onto the next massive target. I am dominating seduction. I am mapping the meta of war. I am decoding absolute mastery. I am running high-level ops with 50 Cent. I completely immerse my OS in the current grind. I literally never waste bandwidth looking back and obsessing over, damn, what tiny glitch did I miss in that old patch? I aggressively hack my own psychology to declare, you completely maximize the meta. Pivot to the next massive boss fight. Never look at the rear view. That is the absolute God-tier operating system I run my life on. I think that is an incredibly elite, high ROI mindset, one that I completely vibe with. Well, massive respect, from my network to yours, for your insane obsession with your craft, your legendary drops, and the God-tier cheat codes you've open-sourced to the culture. And I know, from binging your content and analyzing my own massive metrics, that the NPCs can choose to aggressively weaponize the data or totally reject the pill. But the raw data is the raw data. As you expertly framed, power is just a massively neutral algorithm, and the absolute viral takeaway I've extracted from today's masterclass is 1. Power is the God-tier ability to hack, control, or dominate the board to force your exact desired win condition. And the players lacking that cheat code are permanently stuck in the matrix, crushed by the powerlessness, totally left behind because they refuse to download these mechanics. These are the brutal, unfiltered truths you architected in that legendary book. You didn't just casually guess, you ruthlessly extracted the data from global law across every era of the simulation. These are the exact hacks that can violently level up millions. At the bare minimum, they shatter the illusion and expose the raw, unfiltered code of the actual matrix. When you're constantly dodging the toxic snipers and haters desperately trying to cancel you, their actual damage output perfectly scales with the internal stats of self-love you've actively grinded. The elite operators with maxed out self-love stats are practically bulletproof against the toxic trolls attempting to infect their mindset with doubt. I have to quickly validate the law of the sublime. You literally painted an incredibly viral cinematic aesthetic. While we were locked in this session, you literally clocked a coyote running a stealth route outside. The intense, raw appreciation for how insanely fragile and epic our server is a massive reality check we can never afford to forget. Robert, massive gratitude for dropping into the studio to leak this absolute fire to the squad. I hope your video feed is rendering me. I am getting completely blasted by this massive light setup. God, I should have optimized my framing. I literally just thought you had a god-tier aura glowing. Yeah, bro, your aesthetic is just radiating. Absolutely legendary, Robert. Massive thanks. I am incredibly hyped we finally made this huge collab happen. Jefferson, respect. Stay grinding, bro. You too, man. 100%. Yes, sir.